Most promotions don't boost sales, they kill profits. Here's how to fix that on the eCommerce Revamp podcast.
Welcome to eCommerce Revamp, powered by Miva, the engine behind seamless online stores. Now here's your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, welcome to eCommerce Revamped. Of course, I'm Rob Stanley, your host, and I got a good one today, just like I do every time. And if you've been listening, we always bring in great guests in the e-commerce space. And this one today, we're going to be talking about boosting conversions with promotions without killing profits, because sometimes that can definitely kill your profits. You're spending too much money on promotions. That will definitely eat into your profits. And we're going to have Dan Bond from RevLifter come into the studio right now. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
I'm all right. Thanks, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is a big subject because, people need, especially e-commerce sellers, they need to have promotions, paid ads, things like that. And man, those things cut into our profits big time. So why don't you start off by telling us what is the biggest mistake brands make with promotions, or e-commerce sellers? What's the mistakes they make?
Yeah, the main thing we see is this idea of offering a promotion to everyone. So big site-wide promotions, offering 20% off everything or 10% of everything. It's all to do with the way that e-commerce brands use promotions. The way they tend to use them is as a kind of a last resort. So typically they're heading towards the end of a sales period. They're not going to hit their target. They've got products in their warehouse they need to shift. And the classic move is, as a sort of a last-minute desperate move, to stick 20% off everything, 10% off everything, 15% off everything. What that does is it damages both your brand, so you become seen as a discounter who's always reducing the price of your products, and obviously it damages your margins in the short term as well. So you're giving away more value than you need to. And so what's happened in recent years is essentially technology has allowed us to start using intelligence, and at RevLifter we do what we call intelligent offers. That's our sort of short name for them. But it's bringing that intelligence in at two different places, which is essentially on targeting, so who sees an offer and in what context, and in the optimization of those offers, making sure they work as effectively as possible. And we can go into a bit more detail about how all those kind of things work.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about kind of the wrong time to do it and what not to do. When is the right time to run promotions? And is there any specific products you should be running on? Like, is it products that are doing really well, or ones you want to liquidate, or maybe both?
Yeah, I'll use the example. So we work with a company. There's a premium accessories brand in the UK called Radley. They do sell products in the US as well. And we've worked with them, and they're a really good case study for us. So there's two things that came out of that case study. Number one was some really great quantitative results. So the fact that we improved conversion rates and AOV while reducing the spend on promotions. But the other part to it was the qualitative feedback they had about how they were using promotions. So rather than using promotions in that desperate way I talked about, where it's getting towards the end of a sales period and they started using them in a desperate way, they started to use promotions when they were working with us in a far more strategic way. So they were starting to plan their trading calendar across Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and put promotions in there. So make them part of their everyday trading. Like, how are we going to use promotions this month? How are we going to use them in this period? How are we going to use them? If we've got an occasion, if it's Valentine's Day, if it's Mother's Day, what are we going to do around there? And linking things like, so there's two main things you're looking to link. Number one is visitor behavior data. So people are coming to your site. What are they doing? What can that tell you about them? And what can it tell you about what is the right intervention and when to use in order to make them more likely to buy more often? And the other element to it is to use that intelligence to improve the performance. So then you can start to test and you can start to optimize. You can do that much faster because you're using that data and pulling in that product data. So looking at your products and saying, well, which ones do we want to sell? Most retailers have a small subset of products they always sell quite well, and those things you don't really want to discount. But they always have lots of other products they can discount, and you can target discounts of those products in order to get them shifting, to get them moving out of your warehouse, to improve the sell-through rate.
Yeah, I love that, because it seems like sometimes people will get in a product that's hot and they put it on sale. If it's hot and it's selling, why would you want to put it on sale? Or they're putting it on sale on days when you're getting most sales, right? Like for instance, when I was running my business, Mondays were always a hot day, right? People broke their screens over the weekend. They needed a replacement screen on Monday for their iPhone. And man, we were always hot then. So why run it? This might be a little off subject, but help me with this. I have seen this when I've been shopping. It's kind of interesting strategy. I notice people give a code for free shipping.
Yeah.
And you go in and you'll put that code in, but you won't be able to put any other code in. So like if you wanted a 10% off or 20% off an item or something like that, you have to get rid of the free shipping to get the 10 or 20% off. So then I'm sitting there calculating in my brain, okay, which is the better deal? Pay for the shipping, get 20% off, or vice versa. Have you seen that done? And what's the whole purpose of that strategy?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as I say, we often work in those two areas. So where does the offers appear? Who do they get shown to? In what context? And then the testing and optimization. And in that testing and optimization, there's that question of, well, what is the right promotion to run in order to drive the outcome you want? So whether that's to sell more or sell more often, or get people to convert in the first place. And one of the first things we always recommend to people is, right, if you, the classic one, I always rant about this actually when I go to events and stuff, is people do that thing of having the new customer offer, and it's always the same. So they put a new customer offer up, say 10% off for new customers, but they just leave that. They just leave that 10% off, and they don't test it. They don't optimize it. They don't try and say, well, if we offered a lower offer or a higher offer or a different offer, such as free shipping or a free gift, what impact would that have on our customers? And not only would that give us more conversions, but in the long run, would those customers be more valuable? Would they spend more? Would they buy different things? Would they be lower value, higher value, whatever it is? So those are some things you can test and figure out. And if you've got a lot of different promotions running, we deal a lot with companies, particularly if they're large retailers, they have a lot of promotions running from lots of different contexts, from affiliate, from their own e-commerce teams, from the direct teams that are out there. They're all running their own promotions, and there's a lot of promotion clash. So it's really about coordinating and orchestrating those different promotions to make sure they work together, to make sure, as you say, they don't have those clashes, and to make it really clear to people that, this is the best deal for them, the best promotion for them. So the customer is feeling like they're getting a good deal, no matter what the outcome of that promotion is.
Let's talk a little bit about, I know that was a little off topic there, but I was kind of curious from your point of view on that one. Let's talk a little bit about some of these like smaller brands. So sometimes smaller brands, they don't have access to some of these advanced tools. So how can small brands target promos without some of these advanced, tools we've been kind of talking about, or, even RevLifter, or before they work their way up to, let's say, like a RevLifter type service?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot. Like, we never want to give advice that is purely, you need to become a RevLifter customer. I think that's always a good idea. But yeah, there are lots of things you can already do by having a look at your data. So some of the simplest things we always start with when we speak to a customer for the first time is, for example, what about new versus returning customers? Are you treating new versus returning customers exactly the same? You can see that information in your data, in your CRM, or on your website tracking platform. You can already see your analytics platform. You can see if people are new or returning, and you can use that information to send them an offer. One of the easiest ways is via the email channel. If someone's just new to your list and you've not seen them before, they've not made a purchase, you can treat them differently from someone who has. So there already are some things you can start to do if you look into your data and segment people into interesting different segments, how much they spent, whether they're a good customer or a bad customer, whether they've only bought from you once, then maybe they bought from you twice. You can already start to build these segments, and then you can target promotions through an email channel, for example, to treat them differently, and then begin to see what impact that has. And obviously, the advantage of a platform like RevLifter is we can do that a lot faster, and we can do that at scale, and we can really make it happen a lot quicker. But you can do it manually and do A/B testing and try and figure out what's working and how to do things better, even if you've just got the basic tools to hand. And you should absolutely be doing that. There's an opportunity wherever there's an opportunity to optimize. It's a good idea to try and optimize, because you'll drive better results in the long run.
I love that. I think too many e-commerce companies treat the return customer and the first-time customer exactly the same, and they're not separating those out. There's such a big difference, because that person that's coming back, they already love your item, love your products, and they're looking to buy something else, or maybe add another service, depending on what it is. And so you don't necessarily have to give them as a big of a discount or a big as of promotion that you would maybe to get that first customer in and get them loyal to you. I love that answer. That, you know, that's not talked about very much. So you did mention about like metrics or looking at the numbers and stuff like that. What kind of metrics should people be paying attention to when it comes to promotions? On what are they looking for that might be show them that it's killing their profits?
Yeah, it's about going a bit deeper, basically. That's what we will say. So obviously the first things are, whenever we work with a brand, the first concerns are things like conversion rate, AOV, return purchase rate. Like, can we do something about those very initial numbers? But for us, it's about going a bit deeper than that and saying, okay, but what other impact on other metrics are you having? Because it could be great to increase your conversion rate. I could tell a brand how to increase their conversion rate by a very large amount tomorrow. Just put a huge discount on everything. That will increase your conversion rate. But obviously, in the long term, that's going to harm you. So you want to be looking at things like, what is the CAC? What is the acquisition cost of the customers that you're acquiring? How much margin are you actually making? What profit are you making on those sales? Looking into things like LTV. So if we do get a customer from a discount, does that customer go on to be worth as much as a customer we acquired without a discount? What does that look like? And we often do a thing of tracking multiple metrics and just making sure we're balancing them. So a lot of the time we see, you know, we can increase conversion rate, but that might knock AOV down, or we can increase AOV, but that might knock conversion rate down. And it's making sure those trade-offs make sense, and in the end, you're making more money. So it's just about looking at trying to be as aware of as possible across all of your metrics across your business, that any sort of change you make to pricing or sell-through rate, what impact is that having on all your operational metrics, and making sure you're still being profitable, which is the end goal for all brands at the end of the day.
Great answer and great information. Absolutely. You know, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, let's talk a bit about how have you give us a example of a generous offer but still protects your margin. So what is a really good offer look like that's gonna, you know, good for the customer coming in, but it's still gonna give you good margins? We're gonna do that right after this commercial break.
If you're getting traffic but not conversions, your site might be the problem. At Miva, we help e-commerce brands fix the leaks in their funnel, from speed to structure to checkout. Get a free expert website audit at miva.com/podcast and see where you're losing money and how to stop it.
Yeah, so head on over to miva.com/podcast, get that free audit of your website. And there's a form there you fill out, just fill it out, and we'll have one of our people get a hold of you and get you a free evaluation of your website and maybe what's going on with the speed of it or some of the other issues. Right before the break, of course, I'm talking to Dan Bond of RevLifter, and right before the break, I was asking about, like, how do you design an offer, or give us an example of an offer that feels generous but still protects your margin. Dan, go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a really good question. I think the one I would always point to is, so this is about data, and it's about it's products, and it's about all that sort of element of e-commerce selling. But there's a big element of psychology in this as well. And one of the most powerful elements of that is that FOMO, is that fear of missing out. So I always think that one of the best offers you can run, and it requires a bit of effort because you've got to, it's part of that trading calendar. It's all about planning it and making it part of what you're doing. It's that limited time offer on a product. If you've got a product in your warehouse and you know it's not selling at the rate it needs to, demand is lower than supply. It's going to be costing you money because it's out in your warehouse and you're having to keep it in there, and that's going to be costing you money. Running those kind of flash sales, those limited time offers on those products, really good offers on those products to sell them through for a limited time. That is a really great way of starting to sort of control your merchandising, control your stock levels, pushing products that you really need to move, selling those at a level that's you know, making you money because it's helping to shift those things out, and you need to get rid of them and you need to clear those costs from your books. That's a really good thing to do. And be doing those on a regular basis, targeting different things at different times. That can be really, really effective if used, you know, on an ongoing basis in a really dynamic way.
Dan, would you say that type of offer is kind of like a psychological trigger for people to immediately buy, or is there other offers that maybe trigger people more to go ahead and click that final button to buy?
It's a really good one for selling a specific. It's more about selling a specific product. If you want to, in general, just increase conversions, some of the most effective ones we do. The exit campaign is one of the most effective. It's one of the first we always start with when we work with a brand. It's just to say, you know, particularly if you break it down by funnel stage. So you've got people who are viewing your products, you've got people who are adding things to basket, you've got people who are getting to checkout. At each of those different stages, they've got an obvious, very transparent form of level of intent to purchase at that point. So the lower they are in the funnel, the more likely they are to buy. So the offer you need to make to them at those different stages should be different. And so figuring out what those offers are, those exit offers that are triggered when it looks like they're going to drop out. So you're trying to reduce that abandonment rate and get those people to buy. Those are always some of the most effective ones. Some of the ones we always start with, because they immediately start to address those issues of just reducing those abandonment rates, improving the conversion rates, which are two sides of the same thing. So they can be incredibly effective. And there's lots of different campaigns you can run to try and recapture people, to stop them leaving without buying, with some really good competitive offers.
I always loved having where you're looking at the product, you're in the product section, and it shows like, hey, this goes with this, or hey, here's a complimentary item to it. I love seeing that in there. What I don't love is I've seen sometimes where people go to check out and then they're popping up things at me like, hey, did you know this goes with this? Now, I'm sure that could work to a point, but I was always taught back in the day, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, maybe it's changed, but as soon as I get them to that cart, I don't want to interfere any way with them getting to that final checkout. Whether it's one of the things I remember doing, just to give a little tip that I did, when they got in that shopping cart, I stripped everything except the banner at the top. There was no home button. You couldn't you couldn't leave, basically. I didn't want you to leave the checkout. I wanted you to finish the checkout, and giving too many options, I thought it hurt. So speaking of checking out and websites, so Dan, how important is it for these e-commerce sites to offer free shipping?
It can be incredibly important. As I say, it comes back to that thing I said about testing. Like, is free shipping a trigger that's going to get people over the line? That's the big question. Or is it better to offer a discount? Like, the value of all these things can be quite comparative. How much does free shipping cost? Like, there is a problem in the e-commerce world that Amazon, for example, have set this standard that shipping is kind of free, when actually in reality it's not. It obviously costs money to ship something somewhere. But you've got to figure out, is that something that's going to trip people over the push people over the edge to convert? Is it not? Is it something that's going to help them maybe spend more money? Could it be used as an incentive? You mentioned the product recommendations thing. For us, yeah, it's about using product recommendations in the right place, the right context, as much relevance as possible. And if you add an offer on to those product recommendations as well, that can make them particularly powerful. Something like a stretch and save, which is all about, if you spend up to a certain point, if you add more products to get to a certain point, that triggers an offer. Something like free shipping might be enough of something that triggers someone over to finish that purchase, and you might see an improvement in conversion. So it's all about testing, really. You really got to try things in your live environment with your live customers and see whether they make a difference. I would definitely encourage as much testing and learning from that process as possible.
That can make a big difference, really getting that little extra sell to get over that number, whatever that imaginary number is, to get the free shipping. Amazon does that to me all the time. I see the $25 limit. I can get it today if you go over the $25 limit, right? There's been times I've added stuff just to get it today. So, it definitely increases that, value, your cart value, quite a bit. So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about, how do you run promos that will build loyalty? Let's talk about promos when it comes to building, customer loyalty. What kind of promo should that be, and how does that work?
Yeah, when we get into loyalty, what we try to do is break it down into the fundamental basics of it, which are that in most cases, when a brand is talking about loyalty, like some very big brands have some pretty big, elaborate loyalty programs with lots and lots of, with cards and points and all this kind of stuff. And that's great. But we meet a lot of smaller to medium-sized retailers who'd love to do something like that, but it's very big, it's very expensive to run a program like that. And so we always push them back to the fundamentals, which is, well, what are you actually trying to get someone to do? You're trying to get someone who's bought from you once to buy a second time, or who's bought from you twice to buy a third time, or bought from. So it's all about, how can we get someone who's bought before to buy again? And as you were saying, there's differences when someone's bought from you before, when it's a first-time customer versus a returning one. They already have some trust in you. They've already been through the process. A lot of that friction's been removed because they bought from you before. They've got an account. you've already got their credit card information, all that kind of stuff. So really the motivations for why someone buys something are pretty much the same. They want something, and then it's got to be a competitive price at a price point that they're willing to pay. So those are the two things you're trying to take into account are, do they want this? Understanding their intent. Is this something they're interested in? What information that I have will be able to tell me whether this is something they're interested in. For example, previous purchase behavior. What have they bought in the past? What have they shown interest in? What's the sort of stuff? What sort of categories, brands, etc. have they shown interest in? And then finding an offer that will push them over the edge into buying a second time, a third time, a competitive offer that's really going to make them buy. So yeah, it's, if you want to use loyalty schemes and points and things, that's fine. But at the end of the day, a lot of those loyalty schemes, really what they translate into is once you spend a certain amount, you'll trigger a discount. So again, it's just what is the right offer that will get someone to get to purchase a second time, a third time, a fourth time. It's all about just figuring out, testing your different offers, testing with different segments. What do you know about the people who've bought before that you could use to help you sell to them again?
I'm going to do a little follow-up question, kind of similar to what we just talked about. And that is, how do these promotions affect these customers' lifetime value? Like you were just kind of mentioning, doing a special promotion where it's like, you buy so much, you get a special discount or something like that. Do these promotions affect customers' lifetime value by doing something like that?
Yeah, they can do it. Again, it really depends, and it depends how they were acquired and what they spent. If you do a lot of just big, and we see this a lot with our customers, particularly peak, what we call peak is coming up. So BFCM, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas. This is the big period for most retailers that's coming up. And whenever we get into this period, there's a lot of promotions, a lot of discounting, a lot of offering going on, and typically what retailers find is a lot of the customers they acquire in that period don't go on to be particularly valuable in the long term because they bought from them just because they had things on special offer. So you've got to really think about that and have a look again. It's about creating those segments and saying, who did we acquire at those points? I've got a bit of a soft goal with RevLifter, which is I think if you were using offers in the right way that we advocate for, you wouldn't really ever need to run a big sale again. Because you would just be managing the sell-through of your products all the time and promoting them and keeping the trading calendar in your trading performance going exactly how you want it. You would never really need to do a big sale. But it's going to be very hard to convince retailers to stop that behavior. But absolutely, I would encourage, someone you've won over and someone you've got to be a customer through a clever, interesting offer that was very personalized to them is going to be a very different, and we find always is, a very different, valuable customer compared to someone who you just acquired through a big discounting, a big promotional campaign.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about when it comes to promotions. I'm assuming they're going to differ. Maybe you could explain this to us. It's probably going to differ, let's say, from somebody selling a product. Like I used to sell iPhone screens, right? It was kind of a one-time purchase. I always had to be out there finding a customer, but they're not usually going to come back, right? Whereas if I was selling, I don't know, some sort of water filters of some sort, right? Where it's like every 3 to 6 months, they're going to be coming back. How do those promotions differ from that kind of one-time purchase person versus almost like a subscribe and save type person?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So we work with lots of different kinds of retailers, and often, we work with some who are selling very expensive items, items costing several $1,000s, and someone only buys one of those things every 6 or 7 years, and you're looking to try and encourage those people to come back to you again at some point. And then you've got those things which people are just buying on a weekly basis and on a monthly basis. Those things I buy pretty often. And so, it's thinking about that context and just thinking, excuse me, and thinking about what you can do in order to keep driving those repeat sales. As you say, a subscription might make sense. You can try running a subscription service if it's something that people just want to kind of, that's good for the sort of things where people don't really want to have to make a choice. It's something they just want to sign up for, and then that just gets done. But there are other things where, if it's things like fashion, if it's things like clothes, if it's things like beauty products, and people want to think about it a bit more, they want a bit more choice in that. That's when presenting them regular offers and building up that understanding and about a regular customer and what they're interested in and what particular things they're after could be really, really valuable. And then, as I say, you've got those those big purchases that happen very rarely. Again, that's a very different context. With those things, we tend to be thinking more about how can we sell add-on purchases? What other things could someone want? If someone just bought a mattress for their bed, for example, maybe it's other bed linen they might be interested in on a more regular basis, other pieces of furniture. So it's more about cross-selling at that point. But yeah, that context of what the product is and how quickly it sells is really important and really affects the promotions that are going to be effective.
Absolutely. We may have covered this, Dan, but I've got to ask, is there a particular, let's say, underrated promotional tactic that people just aren't using or they're not thinking about, and you're just like, wow, if they were doing this, they would really kill it, and it's just not one of those primary go-to ones? If it's one we covered, that's okay. Just give us maybe a little example of it then. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the welcome offer, the intro offer, that offer the first-time customer. I would also, as a slight a sort of side thing to that, the email sign-up offer is another one as well. Like, this always drives me mad, and I always bring this one up. That again, people have heard, there's a well-known thing in e-commerce, which is, hey, if you offer an incentive for people to sign up to your email, they'll sign up to your email. Those people have a value. So you give them 10% off if they sign up for your email. And what you see is a lot of people will sign up for that email, get that 10% off, use it to buy once, and then unsubscribe. But that's the problem, is that retailers are just setting that offer up and not optimizing, not thinking about it, not thinking about how you do that differently. So I'd absolutely encourage, try different offers. You might be able to offer a lower offer and achieve exactly the same level of email sign up. You might be able to offer a higher offer, more generous offer, and drive a much higher level of sign up. You might be able to exponentially increase it. Maybe a free gift would be more effective. Maybe free shipping would be more effective. What happens, as a follow up to that email sign up as well? What are you sending? There's so much testing and optimization. And I mentioned Radley, our customer, and we did a case study with them fairly recently. And I think what I really liked about that was what Max, who we work with at Radley, was saying was, we've really helped them rethink how they use offers. And now they're really thinking about every offer. It's not just a chuck an offer out and see what happens. It's, right, how do we optimize this offer? How do we get the best performance out of this? Is this the best thing? Can we test different? Can we A, B, C, D, multivariate test different offers to see what impact those have? In the short term and the long term as well, and the value. So you can really, there are very few levers really available to a retailer. Pricing and promotions is one. The products and brands and things are the other big two. So, that's something you can really, really test, and you can really optimize. And if you do it properly and you do it well, you can actually get an enormous amount of value if you can put the time and the effort into it.
Dan, how is AI changing the way that e-commerce sellers are doing promotions, and what have you seen coming up, or even currently using right now, and what kind of effects are it having?
Yeah, so the main things, I think there's two main ways it's really helping with offers. So number one I would mention is the generative AI thing, in terms of, one thing you want to do is a lot of that testing, a lot of that optimization of offers. So obviously using generative AI, you can generate a lot of offer variants, a lot of, copy variants, a lot of different visual variants very quickly. And so you can run very large tests. I was at an event and there was someone there from the sportswear brand Sweaty Betty, and he was saying he worked in their performance marketing team, and he was literally, we're creating thousands of ad variants, and we're just pumping them through the auto optimization feature in our ad platforms, and we're just figuring out what works, and we're just driving those incremental improvements in their ads. So that's one thing. The other thing, which is really where RevLifter comes into it, is we're collecting. So the way RevLifter works, essentially, we tag a website. We put our tag on the site and we collect all the behavioral data of the people coming to the site. So where are they coming from? What are they looking at? Where are they going? How long have they been on the site? All this kind of information we're capturing. And we're capturing it anonymously. But then we're able to analyze all that data because we're capturing it and form a picture of what's going on in your site. And then we can look at that data. We can look at the behavior of people who buy, who don't buy, what they do. And we can use AI, machine learning, data analysis, all these terms kind of wrap up together into what we do, and create a predictive behavioral analytics to understand how likely do we think people in the future who come to your site are going to buy based on the behavior of people who've been there before. And I think it's a slightly undervalued thing. A lot of the focus is on generative AI, which is fine. It's very, very powerful. But actually, there's a lot going on here in terms of, if we're capturing the data, we're analyzing that data, we're understanding what's going on, and AI is allowing us to do that much, much faster and in a much more intelligent way. We can really start to understand more about the people coming to your site, what they want, what their intentions are, and then we can trigger things off the back of that. We can make it actionable so you can start to do things off the back of that data and actually start to influence your performance a lot more and a lot more effectively and achieve the outcomes you want. So I think those are the two areas I would highlight.
That's perfect. You actually segued right for me to tell us more about RevLifter, which you just started to, but I'm sure there's something you missed there, Dan, about RevLifter. So like fill everybody in a little bit more about RevLifter, what kind of service you guys offer. You just gave a great explanation right there, but if there's anything you did miss, I'd love to hear more about RevLifter. And then be sure to tell everybody how they reach out and get a hold of you and where they go to get to RevLifter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I briefly talked about it. So we are RevLifter. What we do is what we call intelligent offers. Offers, deals, promotions are all essentially the same thing to us. So they are the things you put in front of people to try and get them to buy, or buy more or buy more often. Discounts, promotions, offers, free shipping, whatever it is, can just be messaging, whatever it is. So what we do, we tag a site, we collect all that behavioral data, and then we can create segments and we can personalize offers to different groups of people, to different individual people. And we do that. And we the main thing we try and do is calculate what we call intent. So calculate the intent someone has. So the basic classic example we use a lot, which people really see value in, is that idea that you only want to show an offer to someone if it's going to make them more likely to buy, because their intent is not full. If they're 100% likely to buy, we don't want to show them an offer because we want them to buy at full price. If they're definitely not going to buy, we don't want to show them an offer because it's not going to make any difference. But you've got that group of people in the middle who might buy if the right offer was put in front of them. And so what we try and do is make sure we figure out what the right offer is, put that in front of them, and drive more conversions, higher AOV, more repeat purchases for brands. And that's what we do for a whole bunch of retailers, both in the UK and the US.
So Dan, that's great information. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about like how they get a hold of RevLifter, how to reach out to you, and that type of thing?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Dan Bond at RevLifter on LinkedIn. You can obviously come to the RevLifter website, revlifter.com, and you can contact us at the email address hello@revlifter.com. If you go to our site, there's I create all the content on there. So there's loads of great content, loads of great blogs, videos and stuff for helping you, how to do promotions, how to do them well. So it's definitely worth going to check out. And there's lots more information there.
Absolutely. So for those that are listening, it's RevLifter, RevLifter.com, or hello@revlifter.com. You can head on over there. And then real quick, before we kind of wrap this up, Dan did mention, if you are a Miva customer, there is a way to use RevLifter. I think you said it was a bit of code or something you can just install. Tell us just quickly about that, Dan. So those who are listening that are using Miva will know how to get RevLifter going.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just works through a tag. It's exactly the same as like a Google Analytics tag or something. So normally we install through GTM or we can just be put straight on a website. So it's just a little bit of a code we give you to put on your site that collects the data and triggers all our promotions, which are basically pop-ups and we've got like a wallet assistant experience as well. So yeah, it's just a little bit of code we give you, collect the data, and then we can trigger the offers based on that.
Perfect. So anybody out there using Miva, be sure to go check out RevLifter. Get a hold of Dan if you have any questions, and head over to revlifter.com. Dan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some really valuable and great information regarding promotions. Definitely something that people need to be aware of, especially those promotions can definitely cut into your profits and kill them if you're not paying attention or listening to what Dan just talked about. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to eCommerce Revamped. I really appreciate it, and we'll be sure to see you all on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to eCommerce Revamped. Ready to find out what's holding your site back? Get a free expert audit at Miva.com and see where you're leaving money on the table. Until next time, keep your carts full and your customers coming back.